Good afternoon. I'm Sharon McBride, Head of Seller Advocacy at eBay. And thank you all so much for taking time out of, I know what is a really busy time for our sellers, which is a really good thing. We're all very blessed to be in e-commerce during these times. Today, we are delighted to have a representative from the US Postal Service, Steve Monteith, who's going to talk to a little bit about postal operations these days, but mostly take your questions. So get those ready for him. This is our third in a series of COVID-19 webinars, and we will be doing more. So please look out for more emails from us for future webinars. I always like to start with eBay's purpose every time we get together. Again, we're so blessed to all be working in the eBay community because we exist to empower people and create economic opportunity. That's what everyone on the GR team gets up every day and thinks about and works towards tearing down barriers for our sellers so that they can trade globally and are not overly taxed or overly regulated. And we're just honored to have that opportunity every day. I think Christiana is going to go over a few little technicalities here for you. Go ahead, Christiana.
Hey guys, thanks again for joining us. So some of you, this is hopefully not the first webinar that you've been to, but for those that this is the first webinar you're joining us, just want to give you a quick rundown of Zoom and its capabilities that are specific to our webinar today. So the only main one is our Q&A function, which you will see located at the bottom of your screen, and it's one of the tools that I offer. It says Q&A and it has little chat bubbles. We are not able to verbally hear you. It's part of the webinar functions. If you have a question, please use the Q&A function. Again, otherwise we won't have any way to hear you, get your questions. If you're calling in and you're not joining us via your computer screen, please email your questions that you may have directly to me at chmeyers@ebay.com. Otherwise, please again use that Q&A function and we will get your questions answered. We also want to just give a quick shout out and remind you all to check out our COVID-19 page off of our eBay Main Street page. It's a great place that we're organizing a lot of resources and making a lot of things available for you guys at this time. All of our webinars are actually recorded and sent over or uploaded to the page, so you can share it that way or go back and revisit any content. Has a lot of content that, you know, it's good for state functions regarding things that are opening up or legislation that's passed, so make sure you go ahead and check it out. So now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Ashley, and she's going to get us started today.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us again. This is Ashley Schillingsburg on the Federal Government Relations team here in DC. I just wanted to go through briefly some of the responses that eBay has taken as a result of the COVID-19 crisis. Again, we've put in place a number of seller protections to make sure that your accounts and your feedback scores are protected through the crisis, as operations have been a little bit different. We're communicating regularly with the seller community. As Christiana noted, the Main Street website has a special COVID hub. There's a special COVID hub that is operated on the eBay Inc. site, and we're communicating regularly through the seller hub. We've also started an up and running program, which is a $100 million program dedicated to helping Main Street businesses and people who have not typically sold on the platform take advantage of the platform right now and start selling on eBay. We're also participating in a charity match with sellers who are donating a portion of their sales to charities. We've taken a very aggressive zero tolerance policy on price gouging for certain essential items throughout the crisis, and have restricted some items from being sold on the platform where we have seen price gouging and other nefarious activities. So if you have any questions about any of these policies, please get in touch with us. But just wanted to remind you all a little bit about what we're doing as a business coordinate with you all through this time. And right now, I am happy to pass it off to Steve Monteith. We're very, very fortunate to have Steve join the call. He is the Vice President of Marketing for the US Postal Service. And right now, he's taken on a special function within the Postal Service as part of a special COVID response team. So Steve, thank you so much for joining us, and I will pass it off to you.
Okay, thank you, Ashley, and thanks everyone for joining. Happy to be here and happy to give you an update on a couple things. I'll start, I have no slides, but I'll talk through just a couple things, a little bit about how we're responding to the COVID, our COVID response, talk a little bit about a couple of the things that we're doing, and a little bit about the communications that we have in place, and some of the things that we're doing on a regular basis. And then I hopefully will only take 15-20 minutes to do that, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions as best I can. For those questions that I'm not able to answer, we will certainly get the answer and get those back to you, you know, through the team here. So again, thank you for having me. I'm Steve Monteith. My normal job is I'm the Vice President of Marketing here at the Postal Service. For about the last 8 weeks, 7-8 weeks, I have been part of a COVID command structure that we set up pretty early on in the process. And what the organization decided to do was to pull actually 5 of our officers, 1 at the C-suite, and 4 vice presidents out of our jobs and put us into what they call a COVID command team. And I'll just take a minute and walk you through that. So Kristen Seaver, who's our Chief Information Officer, is heading up this effort. And then along with myself, we have our VP of Employee Resource Management, our VP of Network Operations, and our VP of Supply Chain Management as part of the management team of this. And so really how we're set up is there's a couple guiding principles. One, realizing that the Postal Service is an essential function, and that it's essential that we're out there delivering and delivering, you know, not just prescriptions and so forth, but also keeping the country moving and keeping a lot of the e-commerce business moving. Thank you for your business. And but really, as we thought about it, we have, you know, safety was our top priority, and you know, we have our employees to worry about, and I'll talk through a little bit of that. We clearly have our customers and consumers to worry about as well. So we wanted to put a team together to really take a look at that, and it really comes down to 4 pillars. One, our Vice President of Employee Resource Management is in charge of employee response, and really what that's about is employee safety and well-being, and a lot of that then carries over to how we deal with consumers. If you're still going into our retail units, we're doing a lot of things that other retailers are doing in terms of plexiglass and those sorts of things. So a lot of work on that. Also managing the public health guidance that we're getting, and how we align our policies with what the CDC guidance is. And then as we've gotten further into this, how we align with various jurisdictions as they put various restrictions around travel, around what types of businesses can operate, and all that good stuff. Also in charge of our safety and cleaning protocols, so making sure that our facilities are, you know, we're processing plants, our post offices, that we have all the right cleaning protocols and all the right safety protocols in place. And our employee protocols, so if employees get sick or they have other, they're in contact with people, how we manage our employees. And then lastly, implementing, as with many of you, we've all learned how wonderful Zoom is, or not, depending on the call, but you know, the enterprise telework policy. So we're doing a lot of teleworking for our headquarters and area staffs and so forth, a lot more than we've ever done in the past, so kind of pulling that all together. So that's really kind of the employee response piece of it. The operational continuity piece really is looking at how we keep our operations moving. Just like everyone, where there's hotspots, we have employee availability issues in some of the hotspots. You can guess probably where they are. You know, New York, New Jersey, New York metro area, Detroit, and to a lesser extent in Chicago, you know, where there's been some hotspots. And so making sure that we work through that with those areas, we work through the issues on dealing with that everywhere from our processing facilities to our delivery units and our retail units, making sure we're managing that process. Also working on product visibility, hotspot remediation, so where we do have issues, how do we you know, fix the issues, how do we address those issues, so as issues come in, we work to resolve those. And then lastly, we have a number of things going on right now operationally that, actually this won't be lastly, I have one more point that I do want to bring up on that, but that are large volumes of mail being injected into our system. So, you know, when this started, it was the starting of the process for census mailing to every household in the country, processing census responses. It can be done online. It can also be responded to in the mail. There's a number of follow-up mailings and communications that Census is putting out, so there's a whole effort around that. We also overlapped, even though the dates were extended, with tax season, so dealing with those tax returns that are still coming back through the mail, and working with the IRS and so forth on, you know, because their facilities are impacted in some locations as well, on how we get those through the system. Also with the advent of the Treasury checks, the payments that have been sent out, there's, for those who got the electronic payment, there were notifications by mail that the electronic payments were coming electronically, and then also getting those checks out in addition to normal checks that go out through the federal government. And then lastly, we've seen a big uptick in terms of election mail and interest in election mail. And so, for instance, Ohio went from a what I would call a excuse-based absentee ballot system to you know, anyone could get a ballot via the mail, and they hadn't really set it up. States like Oregon that have been doing it for a number of years, Washington State, you know, went through a process to get to a smooth vote by mail. So we have a lot of states and jurisdictions looking to do more vote by mail, and we already work with them on a number of things, and so, you know, managing all that. On our business continuity side, that really started, that's our VP of Supply Chain Management has taken that role, and it really, in the beginning, was, as probably with many of you in your business life or personal lives, you know, it's trying to find stuff. You know, find supplies, find cleaning products, find hand sanitizer, find wipes, and it's kind of evolved over time as some of those supply chains have opened up a little bit, and we're able to get a lot of that. You know, those supplies, now we're dealing with masks for employees, and the plexiglass that we're putting. We have 31,000 retail units, our bulk mail entry units, and a number of other places where there's customer contact, working with plexiglass. So a number of things like that, evaluating mask materials, particularly for our carriers who are out in the elements, and you know, certain masks, it's now over 90 degrees down in Florida, South Florida. Some of the masks that, you know, have been available, are available, may not be the best long-term solution, so figuring all that sort of stuff out. That business continuity piece also works with the consumer-facing support, industry-facing support, and a lot of our contractor coordination, and all that good stuff. And then lastly, I'm responsible for customer continuity, and basically what that's designed to do is one, activities like this, talking to our customers and our business partners, but more importantly, looking at it on a couple of different levels. One, on the consumer side, how do we address consumer needs? We've seen record-breaking calls to our call center, and in the early days, a lot of it was about can I hold my mail and those sorts of things, to just where's my mail, where's my delivery, and those sorts of things. Working also with industry, and partnering with our sales team. I know our sales team has regular touch points with the eBay team and a number of our other key customers to discuss issues and so forth. And then I also 3 times a week have a call with our industry associations and so forth, just to provide updates. Working with our major mailers and shippers, our mail service providers. Also trying to figure out how to reach our small businesses. So as an example, one of the things that we worked on early on as jurisdictions started to shutter businesses, we had a concern about hold mail. And many small businesses, when your business is shut, probably putting in a hold notice wasn't the first thing top of mind. And our normal policy is if something shuts and there's no hold order, after 10 days we start sending mail back. So we extended that originally till April 30th and extended that beyond till May 30th. We're also working with our local offices to reach out to these businesses, particularly as now we start to see jurisdictions open up and businesses start to reopen, and they may be in a position to receive those volumes, and making sure that we're doing that efficiently and effectively. So that sort of thing that we're looking at. The other thing that I'll cover, and then I think I will open it up for questions. I'm looking at my list, is in terms of just the communications. So I'll back up just a second and kind of finish the thought. So we have these 4 areas. We have a management team of about 13 that includes our law department and some other key areas of the organization. And then we have a work group, and we meet twice a day as a command team. We have a work group that meets daily with about 44 members, and that's the group that really digs in and tries to address the issues and comes up with solutions and all that good stuff. And then there is another group on the command, which is our corporate communications organization, is a key piece of that as well. So that's kind of our cadence, and we meet with our senior leadership on a daily basis, and make sure that if there's issues, we can move things quickly through the organization and get decisions made. So that's kind of how we're set up on the COVID side. The other thing that we've done is we've updated, we've been a lot more active on the communication front. On USPS.com, right below the banner, we have a section whereby you can access basic COVID information. So as with many organizations, you can link out to the CDC, get the latest updates and those sorts of things. But more importantly, we have a section on business, and you can click through on the business side or the consumer side, and that'll get you to any of our industry alerts. It'll also get you to our service alerts, and that's where when we have issues, whether it's a retail unit or in the early days of this, we had a couple plants that we had to close for cleaning and so forth, and we had to offload mail. So that's where you see all the service alerts and so forth. And so you can look at it from a consumer side to see what those local impacts are. You can look at it from the business side and get a view into all those. Additionally, we have a link to international, and if you guys mail internationally, you're probably aware that as of today, we have 112 countries that were embargoed or suspended service to. And really the difference is embargo is the other country isn't accepting mail. For us, if it's a suspension, they may be accepting mail, but due to transportation constraints, air constraints, and so forth, we're not mailing to those countries. And What we've set up off our service alert page, working with industry, is a grid that kind of lays all that out so you can go and get a quick snapshot, so you don't have to open up each individual service alert for the countries, and you can get a laundry list at that. As I said, we're at 112 countries. What we've tried to do over the last few weeks is get into a cadence as things change, where we make new announcements on Wednesday of any suspensions or embargoes and implement them on the following Friday. As it stands today, I'm pleased to say we're actually opening up a country, so we'll be down to 111, so that's a positive move. Always looking for positive, and so we will have that posted this afternoon on an industry alert, and that'll be effective on Friday. We have done a number of other things on international operations in terms of where we've lost air lanes, looking for sea lanes, and through our industry alert and service alert process, we also have been communicating those situations as well. But as you can imagine, when it goes by sea, it takes a lot longer. So we're able to, though, communicate that. I think we had one. I think we did have this one this week. That's going over to Amsterdam and or Rotterdam, I think is where it's going in, but that's getting volume into Europe where we didn't have airlift, so we're able to keep some of that moving, albeit a little bit slower. Okay. In addition, we do have, in addition to those, off our USPS.com, we have business FAQs that we try to keep current, and we do have a industry feedback at USPS.gov is an email site that if you have service issues or any questions and you want to ask us directly, we check that every day. To date, we've responded to something like 517 questions from industry and businesses, and we do post FAQs on our website based on those questions. We block them together and pull all those together. So there's general FAQs, everything from updated guidance on, early on there were questions about safety of packages and mail and what the CDC guidance is and links to research and stuff like that, to more specific questions. And so that's also available there. And then we also have our normal communications through Postal Pro and a number of the other communications tools that we have, and also through our informed delivery and informed visibility tools if you use those. Okay. So with that, I think that's a good update, at least on what we're doing and what we have in place. And so I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Steve. And just to remind everybody how to submit a question, down at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a Q&A button. Please feel free to use that to type in a question. If you're on the phone, you can send a question to Christiana Myers directly, and we'll make sure that it gets asked. And we do have a couple of questions that have come in over email, Steve, related to international shipping. If you could spend a couple of minutes talking about the challenges that you faced in international shipping for countries that are accepting mail, go in a little bit more detail about why the airlift capacity is not there, and why you're seeing some delays, and how USPS is handling these delays.
Okay. All right. So yeah, I think a couple things on that. Some of the things we're seeing, in terms of the airlift capacity, going back a few weeks, something like 80% of the commercial airlift going overseas was cut back, and then a few weeks later we saw similar cuts in air capacity here. So for us, it's finding charters and finding the appropriate transportation, and just trying to manage those volumes and compete for space to get on that airlift. We use a fair amount of commercial airlift in our international transportation network to get things overseas. So that's been one of the key challenges, that we've been facing as we move forward. And so for those countries that remain open, that remains our biggest challenge. So I think that's one of the big keys, and then just finding additional transportation and figuring out the best way to make that work, right? The other thing in terms of some of our facilities, for those locations that are embargoed or suspended, we did start a process for returns to return those volumes, and there is a refund policy that we've posted, and so forth, so you can get a refund, and then when things open up, if it's something that's still going to go, you can resubmit the mail piece. But it's really a combination of volume and then capability and lift just to get it out, and everything tightened up very quickly. It tightened up a lot quicker on the international side with some of the executive orders around travel to Europe, for instance, and some of those sorts of things. We're just now seeing, China has a fairly big backlog, and they're starting to open up a little bit, and we're starting to see some of that volume come and go back and forth. But that's really the challenge, is just kind of managing the capability to move the volume.
Great, thank you. We've gotten a couple of questions in about pickups, which obviously is top of mind right now for a lot of sellers, and a lot of even just our consumer sellers right now, is carriers picking up at residential or business locations. Some folks are saying that carriers are refusing to scan packages, or that scheduled pickups are not occurring. How is USPS handling, and is there a specific place where sellers can go to make complaints or to lodge requests?
Yeah, so use the industry feedback line, industry feedback at USPS.gov, and give us specifics. I have actually heard that over the last couple of days, so we just need to know where these issues are happening. So, in some instances, if it's in one of the hotspots, it may be employee availability making it difficult, but if we're aware of the issue, we can try to work through that and work with the local teams to make that happen. I mean, you can contact your local office, but it sounds like if you're not getting the satisfaction there, that if you get us that specific information, whether it's a town or a zip code or wherever it's happening, we can work through that. That's the best way to get through on that.
Great, thank you. And we'll certainly follow up with everyone with the link for that email address. Thank you, Steve.
And I would say one other thing, I don't want to involve you guys, but if they want to send it through you can get it to me. But the industry feedback line would be the quickest way for us, because we have a team of people that are working through that every day.
Yes, and we're always happy to help in any way that we can. So if anyone's having any ongoing issues, please feel free to get in touch with myself or Christiana, and we'll get your concerns to the right people as well. We also have a number of sellers that are seeing some pretty extensive delays domestically. A week or two for first class mail, and for other domestic delivery options. Are most of these delays that you're seeing regional and related to the hotspots that you noted, or is USPS seeing broader delivery delays throughout the network?
I think for the most part at this point, it's mostly related to the hotspots. So it's New York, New Jersey, and Detroit, and Chicago. At this point, if there's again specific things, you can let us know, or if there's other areas where there's issues, you can let us know. We did on a few weeks back now, maybe more than a few weeks back, add an extra day of expected service for priority mail and first-class package service. And a lot of that was due, similar to the issue I talked about with international. We also saw a fairly large drop in air capacity and lift, particularly from the commercial airlines. And so we added the extra expected day so that you could plan better as you send those things out in priority mail. But that's just a +1. So if it was 2-day or 3-day, you would expect it to be 3 or 4. If you're seeing longer, then we need to know. And like I said, other than the hotspots, we're moving pretty well. You know, there's smaller, you know, locations maybe, but in general, we seem to be moving pretty well.
Great, thanks. And again, we're happy to coordinate any specifics after this call and then ongoing. If anyone's having any issues, please feel free to get in touch with us. We have a question. Is there anything that you can share about package volume and how it's increased since mid-March?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, that should have been in my preamble, so thank you for asking. Yeah, we've seen a large increase in package volume. I think last week was close to 60%. We've been up 30, 40, 50, and then last week 60%. So we're seeing a lot of package volume, and it's actually across the board, across all our product lines, with the exception of, I think, Express Mail, Priority Mail Express. But yeah, we've seen a large increase in across all of our package volume, and so and I think we'll see more, particularly as some of the international opens up. You know, there's backlogs in you know, if we're getting ready to send volume, you know, they're having the same issues getting things over here. So I think we'll see that a little bit both ways. But yeah, the numbers have been huge in terms of the package volume. Conversely, our mail volume's been down. It's leveling off. It seems to be about 30% in general. You know, since we got into this, but the package volume is, we've seen a huge increase. It's peak. It's like our holiday peak, basically, or better in terms of the volume we're seeing.
Great, thank you. We got a specific question about Australia. Why are some packages shipping to Australia going through while some are returned with a note, we cannot accept packages or mail for Australia? Is Australia one of the embargoed countries that you referenced?
I don't know. So I don't think so, but let me check. So I'll check and get back to you on that, on what's going on with Australia. I don't believe it is, but let me check. I could be totally wrong. So I'll owe you that. Right after we're off, I'll check.
Thank you. And then another question that we received is about making claims, and if there are any extensions that are being put in place for making claims during the crisis.
I don't know that we have, but let me check on that too. I don't think we have. I know we put in detailed process for claims on international, and posted that on Postal Pro, and I can get you the link for that. But I don't believe that we've done anything on domestic claims. But I'll verify that as well.
Okay, thank you. And then we have another question on claims that's not specific to COVID, but something that we have heard from our sellers recently is about the requirement that a buyer has to take an item and packaging to a post office for inspection before claims are paid. and whether this policy is under review. As you know, eBay has a money back guarantee.
Right.
So I think some sellers are concerned that buyers will go through that process rather than pursue any claims with USPS if they have to physically take something to a retail location.
Okay, well, I'll get back to you on that one too.
Okay, thank you. Some of these are probably a little bit more detailed than you were expecting on this call, but as you know, we have a very active community, and they're very familiar with your operations.
Yep. All good.
Related to having issues and asking for help, what kind of information is best for our sellers to submit? Zip codes, addresses that they're having a hard time with? What's the best way to convey that information?
Well, I think it's a couple things. Where it was mailed from, where it was mailed to. As much detail as possible. If there's a tracking number, if it's, gee, I'm mailing 10 packages a week to Kansas City, and I have a problem in Kansas City, and I'm mailing it to multiple zips. That as detailed as you can get. If there's actual package information, we can look that up as well. If it's, but the more detail, the better.
Okay, great. We have a question. Could USPS provide zip codes of hotspots to give both buyers and sellers more information to help resolve issues? I believe the Postal Service does have zip code specific information on in their COVID resources. Is that correct?
In our service alerts we do, but I would have to look to see if we have specific zip codes on general service, but like we do have things like if offices are closed and those sorts of things. So it almost sounds like you'd want to know the zip codes in Detroit that are impacted, for instance, or in New York, right? I don't know that we go to that level of detail there, but let me look.
Great, thank you. And then we have a question about a large number of packages being returned due to a bad address in one of the hotspot areas. Have you seen any data around this happening in the hotspot areas where it's more of a operational issue than a bad address?
First, I heard of that, but if you can get me what that is, we'll look into that as well.
And again, we are more than happy to help sellers coordinate some of these concerns and get them to Steve in addition to the industry feedback link that we'll circulate after the call.
Yeah.
Just go through and see.
And it's multiple addresses in that zip code, I'm assuming. So, if you can get us that information as I think about it a little bit, right? All right, yeah, that information would be really helpful.
Okay, great. Yeah, we have had quite a few questions about delays and packages with in-transit times of 10 to 14 days. So we will certainly help to coordinate getting some of those specifics to you.
Yep, that's great.
Right. So just, a big picture question. What's been most surprising for you, coming out of your regular full-time job and being on the ground, coordinating the Postal Service's response to the COVID crisis? What's been most different for you, and what's been the biggest challenge?
I think a couple things. I think the thing that's most different is it's still focused on customers, but it's basically setting up an infrastructure on the fly a small group of people to deal with these issues because they're more frequent and more concentrated. We do disaster work when there's hurricanes and those sorts of things. So we're used to dealing, wildfires, tornadoes. We're used to dealing with this, but actually setting it up and at a national level and having to rethink policies that may make sense, but now, given some of the new conditions, having to rethink and figure that out on the fly. I think one of the interesting things, at least for our organization as a large organization, has been by setting up the command, we basically got every functional group weighing in, so we're able to move things pretty quickly, quicker than we would through our normal everyday, day-to-day. So I think that's been a good thing. I think the other thing too is, for us as an organization, for us as an industry, it's been fun's probably the wrong word in this time, but fun to kind of watch how we're able to keep commerce moving, right? And still keep some things moving, keep elements of the economy moving, and then from a postal perspective, just the kind of the outpouring that we see for our carriers who are out there every day. A lot of local goodwill stories. A lot of our carriers are doing, and other employers are doing really cool things. But just the, a lot of the outpouring around the country of people thanking their carriers for being out there and doing, and delivering and doing all that. I think that's been pretty cool as well.
My neighborhood is full of mailboxes with pictures from kids saying thank you to their carriers. So I think that's been something that's been positive for everyone to witness. I won't ask you to forecast when you think that we'll be on the other side of all of this, but is there anything that you think that the Postal Service will take into kind of normal operations that you've learned from all of this? Or someday do you think we'll be able to look back and just say, well, that was crazy, and everything will kind of go back to normal?
Well, I think clearly there's a couple things. For us, it's just we're going to have to rethink our supply chain on supplies and all that, and make sure we'll update our pandemic plan. I mean, the good news for us is H1N1, we had anthrax in the early 2000s. We had a number of, we've dealt with a number of things like this, so we kind of have a pandemic plan, if you will. I think just updating that. I think what's going to be interesting as an industry, I think what's is what really happens with package volume and what sticks in terms of the package volume that we're seeing today, and other carriers are seeing today as well. Are people gonna want to get back out and go back to a kind of pre COVID level, or are you going to see bigger increases in some of the more creative things that people are doing? And then for us on the mail side, this particular pandemic has really hit. It's hit everyone, but it's hit a lot of small businesses, and a lot of our mail volume and ultimately package volume that's generated from mail are small businesses, and how will the small businesses fare, and what will that recovery look like? What will we get a lot of mail volume from restaurants. What will restaurants look like? What will some of the other businesses that have been hard hit, what are they going to look like? So I think it'll be different. I think, you know, for us as an organization, we're now here 245 years. So, you know, there's been a lot of change. And so, you know, it's just kind of, you know, working through that. One thing we are seeing, we worked with the Greeting Card Association that had asked us to do some quick research. We did some research on the value of the human connection, and particularly now where people are, you know, on lockdown, and you know, there's not a lot of that connection. And you know, mail does very well. Mail and packages do very well in terms of helping build that human connection back and forth. So I think that you know, there's some value from that we'll see too.
Well, that's certainly our sweet spot. And we're a mere 25 years old to your 245. Is that right? Yeah. 245 years old. Yeah, eBay is celebrating our 25th anniversary this year, but I know that we've grown in tandem with the Postal Service over those 25 years. Well, I think that we have gone through most of the questions from our seller community. Again, if anyone else has anything, please feel free to go ahead and submit it down in the Q&A button. But Steve, any last thoughts that you'd like to leave our sellers with? Again, this is a group of very engaged sellers. They've been with part of our advocacy programs for a really long time, and they're very heavy users. They're great customers of the Postal Service. So anything that you'd like to leave them with?
Well, just thank you for your business. Thank you for your partnership, really, right? And we'll get through this, and you know, keep the communications flowing. I know that we communicate with you guys, and you know, frequently, and you know, let's just keep figuring out how to move things ahead and improve service, and continue to work together. So you guys for another 25 years and us for another 245. So
that sounds great. Wonderful. Well, we can wrap up, and again, we'll circulate information on how to report some of these issues, and we're always happy to act as a messenger whenever you're having issues with the Postal Service. So we'll post some information about this following the call. And Steve, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. This has been really, really informative. And just to remind everybody, we are going to continue this webinar series. We've been doing them on a weekly or bi-weekly basis so far, but we're going to put together a monthly schedule, hopefully, where we are connecting you all with government resources and answering policy questions and making sure that you have all the information that you need relative to the crisis and on other policy areas where we've always been engaged as well. So please look for more information on that. And Christiana, is there anything else before we end?
No, just again, thank you everyone for taking the time to join us today. Once again, if we weren't able to answer your questions directly, or you kind of have some follow-up questions, please feel free to email me. It's chmeyers, MEYERS @ebay.com, and we'll work to go ahead and get those questions answered. We'll also follow up, like Ashley mentioned, with an email to the link to this recorded webinar, as well as to other links and resources mentioned throughout this webinar that you guys can use. But again, thank you so much for joining us, and especially in times like this, please don't be a stranger if eBay can ever help you guys. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Steve. Take care.
Bye.